Thank you very much for being here today. My name is Martín Reinaudo, and before opening the discussion, let me very briefly remind you that in 2019, Aapresid had launched its purpose, agriculture evergreen. It's a clear statement, keep the soil alive throughout the year, but it's difficult to do it, how to do it, because it means adapting a system to a specific region, that is to say, a tailor-made jacket for each region producer. And when we talk about the environment, because if two farmers are doing the same, one next to the other, well, probably there is something going wrong. We are going to address three different topics, north to south, and to understand how they apply these criteria to keep the evergreen systems in their farms. Peco Alonso is an agricultural engineer, passionate of the evergreen statement, and he is an expert in dairy cattle as well. Good morning. I'm going to talk about cautiva rotation and what we saw in the field when we decided to change the rotation. Where we are standing today, the resources that we can use to change the inclusion of cruciferous after these 3 years, and some findings. So my first question when I started working at my farm was, am I pleased or satisfied with this? This is soybean with a loss of structure, and probably there is no air, no water coming into the plant and the soil, significant loss of matter and coverage, and this is not a very positive situation. What do we see in the farm? I took this picture close to Oliveros, and look at the edges and with the evergreen statement, and look how we work at Oliveros. So back in 2008, we had single first crop soybean and corn as well, and always the crop was to aim at the port. We had a significant drought with moisture and financial problems, and we see the soil degradation and a significant loss of crop cover. In Santa Fe, in the area of Espinal, it is a transition between the wet plains and the Chaco Pampeana. The temperature on average is 19 degrees. So what are the resources available to us, or how do we keep positive? Well, I think that in a company, the most important thing are the people, the ones that design the plan, the ones that want to change things, to leave the deterioration or comfort zone, let's say, in the area. And this is a key resource, of course, the land that we rent. And what do we pay with the rent? Well, the physical and chemical fertility, the climate, the water. In my area, we have 1,100 millimeters of rainfall, but the range is between 600 to 1,500, and the frost season starts early June and ends in August, late August. So we can do a lot of double crop, even summer to summer, sunflower, followed by second corn, if we have the germ plus available, as it was last year. We have a climate variability, different atmospheric temperatures. I got some rainfall information. We have 4 Februaries of 40 millimeters of rain. So we need to design to try to accommodate the yield of crops. And we need to make the definitions, the yield definitions, late in February. Of course, the machine and the rotating assets. And this is from the books, basically. In order to work and increase organic matter, to have a virtuous circle, we need to follow the evergreen statement. That means intensifying the soil, double crop, more roots, more air, more infiltration, more organic matter, and that is plus life and better yields. And in this way, we improve the virtuous circle. This is picture from a previous Aapresid Congress from Biosapiens. Approximately, we need 1,400 of dry matter. And I was discussing with an expert, and we did the calculation for our area based on the humidity and temperatures of the region. If we move further to the north, we need more carbon to keep the balance. That is to say, the 1,400 kilograms for the south are not enough when we move towards the north. If we move further north, Chaco, Formosa, we need even more. We have low yields, low carbon, and if the rotations are not intense, it's difficult to keep organic matter. In San Justo in 2018, the crop rotation was more or less the same as in my area. Wheat 1 year, sunflower, corn, and sorghum, and the rest soybean. 5 years soybean, half a year wheat and corn. Of course, I don't know if we had the dry matter when harvested, but we are 3.9 tons against the atmospheric demand. We are approximately 2 tons behind per year. Our original soils are 2.93 of organic matter, and there are some farms with 1.8 of organic matter. So we are losing 2 tons that have an impact on the organic matter. So what do we do in San Justo? In San Justo, which is in mid-Santa Fe, we talk about 500,000 hectares. 250,000 are arable lands. And this is what we do with wheat. And this is the winter that we cover. And this is the rotation over the past 3 years of all the area, 20% corn, 20% wheat, and between sunflower and sorghum, almost 20% as well. And the rotation result is the following, like in 2008, but with more corn in 1 year. So basically, we follow more or less the same rotation pattern. My question is, can we do something? Is it possible to introduce a profitable or service crop to get a more virtuous circle to capture or uptake water, to have better yields in second crops? Is it possible to do something to improve the situation? Well, actually, the 3rd year in winter, the 4th year, and 2/3 of the 5th year is free, and that accounts for 44% of the surface area. We are talking about 88,000 hectares. Specialty crops account for approximately 20,000 hectares, with rapeseed, carminata, etc. And this is the condition of the soils today. Sometimes we consider this as normal among farmers and agricultural scientists. So what are the foundations that we have thought of at La Cautiva to work in indirect rotation? The first premise was to have covered winters, that is to say, use the evergreen to have cover crops and to have zero fallow, and to harvest soybean and then wheat and so on and so forth, and get to this date we are sowing, if we had water, sunflower, 20 August corn. Approximately, we should have all the farm sown, 100% sown. But introducing cruciferas have short cycles. They use less water. They have other type of root, and I think that is a great advantage to introduce crucifera in the rotation, and then carbon C4 to introduce organic matter. And of course, we had a situation with the spiroplasm last year and the replacement of nutrients. And we had this condition. This is a virtuous situation. Soybean over rapeseed early November, because rapeseed is tilled early in November. So what do we need to open the mindset? We need to think in different sequences, cycles, non-traditional species. That is the major challenge for us. We need to sow, and that's why we are living. The only way to keep organic matter is by sowing. Cycles, different varieties. We have first, second, corn, and then corn over sunflower. Of course, we need to accommodate the machinery, air sowing, overlapping sowing, the distance between furrows, change the markets, change the logistics. Our rotation has a lot of corn. We produce approximately 4 million tons of corn, and all the corn is placed in our own area with with trucks, and that is the rotation. You can see it here on the screen. Sunflowers, de-weeding, that is to say, monitoring the fallow in order to avoid the presence of weeds. Yield of first corn. So if we have rapeseed, we can compare it to soybean. These are the rotations in San Justo, and these are the harvested rotations. And you can see how our rotation accounts for 7 tons, more virtuous than the average of the region. But we need to consider sorghum, summer, corn, the possibility of having a very short corn in winter, and try to use a mum bean or direct soybean in February. So what about the flexibility for these years? 2022, 2023, it was chaotic because I thought I was not going to be able to sow anything in winter. But we had Camelina with a subsidy for sowing, even with a zero harvest. You received the seed and you were paid $200 per hectare. So I entered into an agreement with Camelina. I sowed the farm with Camelina because it was paid off, and the soil was was covered.
Soja.
Everything went to soybean as a second crop, and yield 17 quintals. in some plots planted with wheat, the result was 0. In the area, everybody who planted soybean after wheat, the yield was 0. What did I do last year? I thought it was going to be a normal year. It was quite normal, more wheat. That wheat went to corn as a second crop, which I lost completely. It's on the floor now. I crushed it, and there is wheat growing on it, but there's a lot of camelina, 400 hectares of camelina. What I'm sharing with you is 1,200 hectares with modules measuring 200 hectares each. So I have 400 hectares of camelina this year, 400 of wheat that's going to go to crop as a summer crop, and a winter crop, well, and corn as a winter crop. I wasn't able to plant anything because it was a dry area. I'm sowing a lot of crucifera, camelina, rapeseed, carinata through this agreement, camelina and rapeseed with bunge, and another crop with new seed. And well, part of it, in some part I have corn as a first crop and sunflower as a first crop, and after that I will have sorghum. Conclusions of La Cautiva in the core area: a wide weather variability. In order to achieve carbon balance, you have to use the approach. So you should use crucifera. Crucifera provide roots, take up water, create a loose soil, and of course C4 in the summer. What is the winter like in Argentina? Due to the rotation, we have 25 million hectares, 40%. 30% of the hectares are free in Argentina. Do we have 8 or 7 million hectares which are not planted, or we just plant soybean over soybean? Is it 6? Could we put a green blanket on that acreage? Could we change the scenario, the vicious circle we have when we have soybean over soybean, where the crops compete for organic matter? This is my message. Thank you very much. We'll have questions at the end of the panel. Now I'll give the floor to Jorge Mazzieri. He is an agricultural engineer. He graduated from the School of Agricultural Sciences, and he is a consultant in the Thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Aapresid, for inviting me to share what we are doing.
Pero
Hola.
están bajo los micrófonos, me parece. Hola, hola, hola.
Hola, hola, hola. ¿Ahí se escucha? Ahora sí. Buenos días para todos.
Good morning. Again, thank you, Aapresid, for inviting us to address you, to share with you information about our production system that includes rotations based on the environments. As you can see, Córdoba is a complex province. We have in the systems, from the geological, geomorphological point of view, water system, and hydrogeological systems. In the arrows, with the arrows, you can see where in which area we work in Union, limited to limiting with Marcos Suarez. Talking about the specifics, the production area I'm going to talk about, well, it's about 150 hectares large. In all, we have 3,500 hectares, and 3,200 are productive, that is. And I'm not going to talk about this area in the circle, the areas of Laborde. Could we please have the timer on, the stopwatch? Well, we are we just represent a small area within the whole area of the south of Córdoba. These are our winter temperatures. This is one of the coldest winters in the last 60 years. In 2007, we had minimum temperatures of about minus 8 or 9 degrees centigrade. Usually we have 100 days of frost in the winter. This is information about rainfalls starting in 1947. This year we are at about 860 and 180 millimeters, with a dry season taking place between May and August. This is the farms. These are the farms I'm going to talk about. In September 2012, the water tables moved up, and we saw, as the arrow shows you, how the endorheic basin started building up excess water on the surface. By the end of October 2017, after 6 years, in 5 of those years, the rainfall was about 1,000 millimeters. Therefore, all the surplus in 2012 became a huge surplus, and this affected rural roads, and we had to find other ways of taking our products out of our farms. Start between 1970 and 2000, I have 2 arrows. One goes up, one goes down. The water table moved up until 2020, 50 years. It moved up from 12 meters, minus 12 meters, until it got to the surface, and between 2020 and nowadays, it moved down again. And in January this year, it was at 5 meters 80, and currently we are at 4.60, 4.70 meters. What we don't know is what the trend is, or what will happen with the water table's impact. At our facility, we have the water table going from 0.36 to 6.50 meters minus in all cases, and here it's at minus 5.08 meters. By the end of 2023, after the third Niña, there was no water surplus on the surface. The water below 1 meter disappeared, and as you can see in the facility, I dare to correct the footprints created during the years of water surplus. It was very difficult for me to make decisions to make the soil even, because otherwise it was very difficult to use harvesters and planters. Regarding the environments, to define the rotation, we looked at the floors relief, and we consider the different kinds of soils, special soils, moving from class 2 to class 4, the effective depth of our soil, except in some specific areas. We have chemical limitations because there is bicarbonate, but usually until 2 meters 20, 2 meters 20, there is a storage of 250. The rainfall records, we have already seen them. Radiation, well, and the species that are going to be that were part of our rotation until 2020. 1/3 wheat, soy as a second crop, and so on. In this 1/3 rotation, we did adjustments within the crops. Soybean as a first crop from group 2 to the long. Group 4, we could change the planting dates, distance between furrows. After that, we had wheat. We used different kinds of wheat, having long or short cycles. In the lower areas, we paid attention to nutrition. Planting date after wheat, we had soybean as a second crop, where we only used 4 short or 4 long maturity groups. We changed the planting date and the distance between furrows. In the case of corn, we looked at maturity cycles, 110, 120, 22, density, planting date, and nutrition. These were the parameters we considered. The environments, we had haplustone soils with use capacity 2 to 4. We have a slope going towards rivers or springs, and we used special channels or special canals to take out our products. We have our plots have a special slope, as I told you, moving towards the river or the springs. We have an endorheic basin, that is canals, which we use to take out our produce. We on whether the basin was endorheic or not. Environments, 35% of the surface has the water table at less than 3.5 meters, and in 65% of our surface, the water table is even lower. Rotations, we replenish phosphorus, sulfur, and zinc. Phosphorus, we use it as a starter fertilizer in wheat and corn. Nitrogen, we apply it to wheat and corn. The rate depends on the environment and the target yield. We define this before planting. This is hectare mini plots. The endorheic basins, well, the plots in those areas send the water through the lowest area. And as Aapresid said, this is the water which is used for a second time, because during the winter it creates a water table that goes down to minus 5.08 meters. Today, that area is at minus 5.08 in the endorheic basin. Planted the slope towards rivers or springs. Well, in these plots, the excess water goes to the Saladillo River. When the water table was high, this was a really good. But now that we don't have the water table, we are talking about creating some terraces. Different environments. These are the plots that have a slope towards the rivers or springs. These are the endorheic basins with canals. There is a canal, one canal which was part of the canal consortium, made us miss the opportunity of using this water for a second time. Now we have already decided to build some terraces so that the water stays in the system. The agricultural results, well, the first 23 years of the rotation with the water table having an impact in wheat, we would get to 4,000 kilograms soy as a second crop, 11 in corn, 11,200, and in soybean as a first crop, it was over 4,000, the first linear, second linear, third linear. In wheat, we didn't get to 3,000. In soybean as a second crop, we were below 1,000. In corn, we didn't make it to 8,000. And in soybean as a first crop, we were below 3,000 kilograms. In El Niño year, which took a long time to come, we decided to go for soybean as a first crop to create a positive balance to be able to plant wheat and corn as part of the rotation. And we used maturity group 3. Rotations until 2022 in the area. Wheat was always involved, which is our main crop. It provided good services with the root systems. We might have rotations, 33% wheat, soybean, corn. In our case, well, and you can see the different charts here. This is part of the past. Currently, we are rethinking the rotations. As we decided to shorten soybean maturity groups, we planted a lot of group 2 and group 3 soybean to create a positive balance so that the wheat may have an opportunity in the rotation. We will start to use or to work on the corn cycle to produce not an excess of water, but an efficient use of water so that we may plant cover crops that produce welfare for the soil. And we have also started changing the third, that planting wheat after corn and soybean as a first crop after wheat and soybean. So the one-third rotation was different in the past because we had a dry season and water in the water table. Today we have a dry season and no water in the water table. So if you just change the rotation, the order of the rotation, we may create an opportunity for corn to get this 70 or 75% of water stockpile, so to say. So to get to 60 or to 80% of the results of the variability in the results rely on the water that has been stored. That's why we have changed the rotation. And finally, soybean as a first crop is quite flexible because of the maturity group and the planting date. Conclusions. It is partially sustainable to rotate in a profitable way. The best rotation causes degradation if we compare it to the pristine environment. The ecosystem used to have many different species. Rotation has to be flexible to introduce different crops in the rotation, not in an automatic way. We should react vis-a-vis opportunities in a creative fashion and ingenuity. We should reach a point of balance with changes in the use of soil. We should optimize the use of resources, land, labor, capital, investment, and machinery. There is not just one size suits all solution. We should maximize soil health and water health. We should take into account the conversion measured in kilograms of grain or kilograms of dry matter per millimeter of water that has been evaporated. Profitability in the rotation should be taken into account to maximize sustainability. We should minimize losses due to water runoff, and we should prevent losses due to depercolation, contributions to the water table, and maximizing the time we are using the line, the soil, and minimize the loss of nutrients. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Jorge. Vamos.
Thank you, Jorge. Now let's move to South Buenos Aires. Felipe. Kleine is an agricultural science from FUBA, farmer, and he leads an agricultural farming facility in Torkinst. Good morning. My talk is a little bit harder or drier. I'm going to talk about the south of Buenos Aires. That includes Torkinst, Bahía Blanca, Patagones, the south of Saavedra, and this area is or shows the farming facility that I'm going to talk about. The survey and the landscape, we can see some plains, Tres Picos, which is the highest in the province of Buenos Aires, and the plain or the valley where we farm. So the farm has 13,000 hectares approximately, and these are the characteristics of the farm, of the water pattern. 800 millimeters of rainfall a year. The concentration of rainfall occurs in autumn and spring. We are talking about clay soils with no influence of the water table, and we have early and late frost that can impact on the yield of the crops. Talking a little bit about the different types of soils in this area, in these 13,000 hectares, 53% or 60% approximately between class 7, 8, 4, and 5 soils, which is the rocky area, and class 1, 2, and 3 soils, where we do the farming and the typical rotations of the area. Now let's focus on the rotation aspect. This is a picture that shows the hilly and the short and long rotations as we divide them for farming purposes, because class 1 and 2 soils can be farmed for 10 years, and then we use different pastures, while class 3 and 4 are weaker soils and cannot cope with so many years of agriculture. When we think in class 1, 2, and 3 soils, 50% are profitable or cash crops, 15% are pastures, and 35%, the remaining 35%, are for winter and summer cattle raising. And as part of the agricultural rotation, we broke it down as follows. Soybean accounts for 13%, but that varies. But the largest portion, it's 25% corn, 25% sunflower, and 25% wheat and barley. The typical rotation may include, for example, barley, winter grass, then sunflower, wheat, corn, sunflower, wheat, corn, soybean, and barley, and the production of dry matter produced by the residue of the crop is typical in the area. In drier area, for example, the wheat yields are approximately 3,000. Sunflower 7 years ago, we changed sunflower and corn. We changed the way of producing. We reduced the density, and they have an important place as part of the soil rotation. And, well, in this farm, it has been under no tilling for more than 30 years. And we ask ourselves, is it enough to do soil rotation? Or we ask ourselves, can we do something else to make the system better in this farm? Well, and there is always somebody that is more open-minded and see things from a different point of view. So, what are the benefits expected by introducing a cover crop where during the time that we have no crops, during the harvest of wheat to the summer crop, we had a fallow basically. And as we said, the dry matter concentration in this area is not very high due to the yields that we can obtain, and this loss of coverage in between crops were very severe, and that was quite clear moving from a low-density wheat, sunflower, and the soil was barren or fallow. So this is a picture, the stubble, where we can see how the soil is because of the effect of the dew, of the wind, and because of the different effects caused by erosion. And when we introduce a cover crop during that period, and for example, if we have a corn stubble and we start sowing sunflower and we don't have some cover corn, and springtime does not carry the necessary amount of rains for the sowing, we have this situation where the first centimeters are dry, they look like rocks compared to this other situation with a certain coverage. And if I need to start sowing, I can rest assured because I have this soil coverage and I will be able to store water, the springtime water, and have time for the summer harvest. So we move from classical rotation, profitable crops only, and introduce other crops. After the summer crop, we introduce grass or hairy vetch, and then grass again, or regrass, or because we cannot do service crops for other type of hairy vetch. And another thing is that as part of our rotation, we can introduce a hairy vetch as a profitable crop, in addition to have corn, barley as cash crops. We can have these hairy vetch and can provide nitrogen and the necessary coverage for the next crop in the rotation. And the question is, can we have cover crops in our area? The answer is yes, but we need to be clear about the drying date, because we talk about the evergreen statement. In our case, I think it's important to follow this statement, but we should be very careful about the drying period of our cover crops, at least in our area. After some trials, throughout the years, we see that the best drying dates are in July, mid-August, where we can make sure of recovering the water profile for the cash crops in spring. What we said, what are the cover crops that work well? Hairy veggies, as we said before, after the summer crop harvest that provide nitrogen, and a cover crop of grasses. And in this case, we should be careful if we use corn because of the lack or shortage of nitrogen that the crop may have. And dry matter contributions or inputs with cover crops range from 1,500 to 2,500 kilograms of dry matter. The important thing is to sow as early as possible during the summer time in February when we have the rains, and start sowing right away because we take advantage of the early autumn temperatures to generate volume. And as we need to kill the crop early, we may get the necessary coverage to have a cover crop with the highest amount of dry matter per hectare. These are some pictures of what we can achieve in our region. The left upper portion shows rye on top of barley. To the right, we see the three variations: long fallow, then a wheat stubble, and then is what we don't try to do, because we decided to kill this crop in October, but we had problems then at the time of harvesting corn. And what we see to the right is the cover crop that was dried in August. And to the left at the bottom, as I mentioned before, we are using hairy veg and rye as a cash crop. And these are profitable crops because we see that this is very beneficial for the next rotation. This is a parcel where during the 2019-2020 campaign, half of the parcel, as you can see here to the right, had 2 years of hairy veg crops that were harvested. And then after the rotation, it was turned to sunflower, the one that you see to the left. And then we put corn again in the whole parcel. So we can see that the corn kilograms obtained as a surplus were on the hairy veg crop area. And next year, on top of the corn, we put sunflower, and we still have the response of the hairy veg on the sunflower. So the title of this slide is that cover crops should be designed as an investment. This is a picture of the parcel of what we can get out of corn with this cover crop. And we didn't talk too much about cattle raising, but we can say something about that. As part of this agricultural rotation, we also introduced different grasses, summer and winter. Summer include oats or different fodders and soybean, and the diversity introduced by these species and the stability provided to the system make or allowed us to intensify the rotation and get more stability out of the system. These are some other pictures with degraded pastures. We can introduce hairy vetches to introduce some pulses and introduce the rations for cattle racing in degraded pastures. Thank you very much. Thank you, Felipe. Thank you, all of you, for making the best of this time. I know it's very difficult to compress all the information in such a short period of time. Very quickly, some questions. Options for the semi-arid north to put that green cover, and the cycle and the sowing period, green cover or blanket for the semi-arid north. That is my proposal. That is the challenge that we face. Think of non-traditional species, because if we put, I don't know, wheat or rapeseed, perhaps camelina may work. I always ask myself, for example, vineyards, why don't they use xerophilas? And that is our challenge. We need to think in special terms. I don't have the recipe. And with regard to water consumption, I would say that for comparison purposes, in my area for wheat, I need 200 millimeters in 200 meters. For rapeseed, I need at least 170 millimeters, or carinata. For camelina, with 120 millimeters is okay. So if you have all these environment, you have the best parcels in fertility and water, and you have 200 millimeters water, you can use wheat. For 170, rapeseed or sunflower, and below, let's say 120, I would go for camelina. And of course, I have spring water that covers the rest of the demand coming from the crops. But the demand goes up, down. First, wheat, fertility, wheat, rape, seed, calinata, and camelina. And the sowing dates for crucifera, 15 April onwards. Dry years, we need to go ahead, because the frost hit hard when we have 5 leaves, for example, rapeseed. But the range is 15 April, 20 May, carinata and rapeseed. 20 August, well, we need water for that period. And camelina's range is higher. You can sow between June 20 to July 15, 20. So thank you very much.